And okay, that should be working now. Now I'll share my screen. How's that sound? You know, I have yet to go a whole class without the mic on. You know, that would be embarrassing. So bear with me. But let's see. Can you guys see my desktop with like windows and stuff? Let me just make sure that's saved so I can close that. All right. Sorry for this really long module, all these YouTube videos in a way. But today we're going to talk about perspective and doing some quick white clay model renderings in Rhino that we can bring in as drafts to begin to understand spatially and what we have here as you develop your structural lattice. Okay. So I'm going to go through a couple of things. A couple of them are related just to maybe making sure that you have the right settings so that these really kind of primitive renderings don't take a long time. It's really important that, you know, if these things take longer than an hour, then you're doing it wrong. You know what I mean? Because, you know, it's not like we're getting, I mean, I like Rhino a lot for modeling, but rendering, it's kind of, you know. So these are kind of the quick down and dirty soft shadow renderosity solutions here, where we're not going to have a bunch of ray trace shadows or direct sunlight, but rather a sky vault, diffuse light, and so we'll have, like I said, tone and soft shadows being painted onto the to white surfaces. So yesterday, or sorry, not yesterday, but the other day, Monday, 14th, we talked about orthographic drawings and using the make 2D command, which hopefully is just a quick review for you guys. Today we're doing the perspectives. For Monday, what I'd like to do is I've put the link here. I've made a new assignment for you guys. So as you continue experimenting, making and developing your lattice structural system, using any and all of the techniques we've gone over so far, you know, it's up to you to sort of choose. I'd like to see some draft drawings of representation of your scheme. So these will include a top and 2 side elevations, as mentioned in the September 14th course meeting, as well as 3 draft immersive perspectives, as demonstrated during today's course meeting on the 16th. Okay, immersive meaning feeling like I'm within, right? In other words, I'm right underneath or inside or right on top of this lattice system, right? So immersive means that I'm, you know, not removed, you know, looking at something from far away from a helicopter or something, but rather that I, you know, spatially, I feel like I'm in the space defined by this lattice. Okay. For line work, you can just basically export to Illustrator and then save as a PDF after you adjust any line weights you need. And then for JPEGs, you know, rendering, you usually get JPEGs or PNGs out, right? So JPEGs or PNGs will work for that. So 3 quick draft drawings and 3 quick draft perspectives. What's due for Monday. What that'll do is that'll let us take a look at the system that you're devising as well as the representation for it, so we can critique both things really quickly and make sure you're on the right track. Okay. This isn't supposed to interfere with any of your design studio work. This won't be as laborious as your design studio or anything like that. However, you know, I do think that there's a level of complexity that you're afforded just by simply using the parametric design tools. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. And then we can also have a nice set of representation. Next week, we'll talk about diagrams some more, and I'll give you a template so we can start talking about board poster composition as well. Okay. So should we get this train chugging along here? I'm going to go ahead and open up Windows and get Rhino fired up here. And I'll just open up something I can, you know, a trellis or something, or lattice, I can just start to render quickly with you guys. I'll make this count. I'll render something that I just need to render anyway for my own stuff. Let's see here if I can find it. There we are. Let's see what I have here. All right, that looks good. Oh, except I don't have it piped. Oops. There we go. No, I take that back. Come on now. Yeah, that'll work. Sweet. Okay, so a couple of things, right? You know, when it comes to rendering, I mean, hopefully you guys have gone over this in 267, right? But there's several different sort of higher level considerations you need when you're thinking about setting up a rendering like we're going to be doing for perspective drawing. So first and foremost, think about your eyes as the camera here. What basic ingredients do we need to be able to see things? Anybody want to throw it out there? How do our eyes work? And in similar fashion, how do cameras work?
Color.
Color. So how do we see colors? What actually hits our eyes?
The light.
Light. We need light. Yes. Right. So we don't really see color. We see the light bouncing off of things. In certain parts of the light, you know, color spectrum bounces to our eyes and others are absorbed, right? Okay. So we need the geometry. We need some light sources. What else? When you're taking a photograph with your camera, right? You know, what other considerations do you make? Let's say you're taking a selfie in the mirror or something, right? Do you like cut off like half of your face when you take a selfie? No, of course not. I don't anyway, because I'm always taking selfies. Anyway, but yeah, sure. But because I just vomited in my mouth a little. Anyway, you know, but the idea there is that, you know, you also have the frame and the shape, right? And how things are actually composed within that frame, right? It's really important consideration. That's one of our tools and tricks that we use as designers, right? As we compose representation, right? How things are actually composed. You know, trying to find balance, you know, as we start to frame things, right? So let's see, what else? Geometry, camera and frame, light, and then materials, right? So not only the geometry, but then, you know, the sort of properties of it, right? So the materials, the shaders, however you want to talk about this, right? I think we all understand that mirrors reflect more than, let's say, concrete sidewalks, right? And yet they all reflect light, right? In fact, a lot of the light that our eyes see isn't direct light coming from the sun, but a bunch of light that's scattered around through all the particles in the sky and bouncing off everything that we see and sort of, you know, becoming a sort of diffuse light source coming in from a variety of directions, right? Okay, so with that said, we're going to take a look at this step by step and try to be as reductive as possible when it comes to this. Let's look at the geometry. Check. This is just mesh geometry. I didn't actually use the pipe command. I made this into a mesh. So these aren't surfaces. These are like set of triangles. Whatever, anyway. Doesn't really matter so much for our purposes. But one of the things I'm going to do is begin to compose this image. So When it comes to that frame and properties of camera, any of you guys use a DSLR? Like a Nikon or a Canon or something? No. All right, so it's all about the lens, isn't it, right? So there's the body of the camera, and then there's also the lenses. And you can replace lenses, right? And exchange them, interchange them. So when it comes to lenses, for our purposes here, we're not going to worry too much about f-stop and exposure and speed. What we're going to look at is lens length and zoom, okay? So if I go to, let's say, my perspective viewport, and I've double-clicked it to toggle it to fill my screen, and I right-click and I go to Viewport Properties. It used to bring up a box in the middle of the screen. Now it just brings up the Viewport Properties in this Properties box over here on the right-hand side. And you can see it gives you the lens length of the camera, it gives you the X and Y and Z location of the camera, and also the target location X, Y, and Z, right? So there's a point in space where our target's located and a point in space where our target is pointed. And then there's the properties of the camera and how much it sees, right? I think by default, your lens length is probably set to 50 millimeter. I actually have a 50 millimeter lens. It's one of those low f-stop ones where you can really get the depth of field and take good portraits and things like that. But it's pretty limiting in how much you can actually see. 50 is pretty narrow, right? So I want to go wider angle. Human eye, typically, if you want to approximate both our straight vision and then also our peripheral vision, is more in the lines of 25 to 28 millimeter, okay? If you want to go super wide angle, almost fisheye, you can go down to 12 millimeter or 10 millimeter, okay? So I'm just going to go and I'm going to change this to maybe something more like 25. What you'll see is that the perspective will be a bit more exaggerated, but at the same time, you'll be able to see more in the same space here, which is important. Should I look inside of this thing? I'm still a little torn on where I'm going to take a perspective view. That's certainly inside of it, isn't it? Oh yeah, look at that. You guys ever gone to a Gothic cathedral and looked up? That's what this reminds me of. Anyway, all right. More about that later. All right, so just keep that in mind, right? We have the geometry. We also want to adjust the camera settings, and that's one way to do it. Let's take a look at shaders, materials, right? So now is it the properties of, you know, what kind of light is reflected and what kind of light is absorbed on our geometry, right? Again, let's see, you can always go to render and go to material editor, right? It's right there, render pull down. All your render stuff is right there if you can't ever find it somehow. There used to be material stuff. Here we go. No. Up here. But it looks like they've made a nice materials thing right here on the right here. As well, our render settings are quick to get to over here as well. So properties, layers, and there's render settings and materials. Go to the materials tab. Looks like I have a bunch of unnamed materials, which is odd because I don't want all of those. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of these and just delete them all. I don't 161 materials. I'm not sure why this file has so many of them. How odd. Okay. Now I'm just going to do something so basic here. It's like silly basic. I'm just going to hit the plus and I'm going to try to find, maybe I'll go with plaster. Plaster, by default, will have a color of white. It won't have any kind of specular properties. If I want to do that, I could change this to plastic, maybe. Let us use plaster. Right, I'm just want a simple white clay model render for these as a contrast to a black background for the template that I give you. All right, now I'm just going to make sure that I can select all of this stuff at once, all the geometry. Here we are. And I'm going to go over to my new shader here, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to say assign to objects. So it's going to assign that shader to all the objects that I have selected currently. I could also assign things by layer or, you know, what have you, but yeah. Okay. Now, let's say I wanted to make another shader. I could hit the plus and, you know, you'll see different categories here. You can actually make your own shaders. You can download shaders that are free. You just put them in the right folder, or direct Rhino to them, or whatever rendering engineer you're using. We're not going to get into mapping and things like that because I just don't have the patience for that stuff. Usually I try to fight those battles in Photoshop post-processing if I have to. Hopefully you guys covered that in 267. Did you guys apply some textures and as overlay layers in Photoshop afterwards, like wood and concrete, and then really play around with ground covering like grasses and things like that? Yeah, okay, good. And rocks and hardscape and softscape. Okay, good. So let's see. Last but not least, I'm going to go to my render settings. And I'm going to make sure that Rhino render is set. I'll leave this as the dimensions of the viewport for right now. It's kind of a rather large viewport size, but I'm going to go ahead and try to frame this view a little bit the way I want it. I'm going to leave this as DPI of 72 and quality as draft quality, because I don't want this to take forever. For backdrop, you can use solid color if you have a specific color that you want to use in mind. You can also instead just check this transparent background box, in which case you will have no background. It'll be transparent when you bring it into Photoshop, right? I'm turning off the ground plane because I don't want a hypothetical ground plane that actually captures shadows and creates a white horizon, or a white ground plane with the horizon. So I'm turning that off, leaving everything else on. So default, I'm making sure that the sun is not turned on. I'm making sure that the skylight is turned on. And then I really don't want to render any of these curves or surface edges or ISO curves or anything like that. So again, I think that's set just as default. None of these are checked. I haven't messed with any of the dithering and color adjustments or anything like that. I'm just leave that default. All right. And once I have this set, now again, I wouldn't necessarily call this an immersive perspective here, but let's see. What would be nice is if it felt like we were in or on this, right? Maybe something like that. I'm gonna go ahead and just hit render and see what we get. Now I can tell you right away, a few things are gonna happen here. One is that this is gonna look super grainy, and that's because of the quality is set to draft quality.
But when we're going to do it in a good quality, correct?
Ideally, once you're ready for the final, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Hopefully this doesn't take too long. It's kind of a rather large, maybe I should just resize my viewport so it wasn't so large, but we'll see. I'm only taking up like half the viewport, really. The rest is just blank space behind it, so. Let's see. Let's see what this gets. And then, the other thing that I wanted to go over once this is done, and we adjust some settings, is to how you save your views. Hopefully you know this, but if not, I want to re-go over this and make sure that's recorded. But this idea that once you've set up the perfect perspective, that you save that view so you can always go back to it and re-render if you need to, right? So you can save these things as you go and begin to make changes, utilize that feedback loop. There's a way for us to take a curve instead of points surrounded it by circles, like the point divide. But okay, I'm not sure what that's about. I got in a few minutes late. Where's this NURBS object form? I'm just rendering a lattice here. Alex, we'll talk about, is there a way for us to take a curve instead of points surrounded by circles, like the point divide, but for circles? You'll have to explain a little more what you mean by that, maybe towards the end of class when we have some time to just troubleshoot things. Okay, so this doesn't look too bad, actually, for the quality being draft quality.
Sorry, Josh, I just want to ask my question one more time because I typed it out. I don't think it made sense, but because I got on a few minutes late. So when I saw this object, it's like taking different form from what we've been doing. So I was wondering, is this just something else that you're doing and you're just
This is my lattice. I'm just showing you how to render lattices, render for this project one.
Okay,
so this is my lattice.
how did you make that like that cone funnel shape though?
I made a surface and then populated it with lattice.
Okay.
So what I did is I made surface, then I divided it up into curves, got those isoparms, and then started making lattice off of them, just like you guys have been.
Okay.
These are meshes instead of piped surfaces, so it's a little different as far as what happened when I thickened this into from curves into some sort of actual material. All right, so this is taking a little while, and I'm not going to like sit there for 14 minutes. Let me just, come on. Yeah, my computer's dragging today. I think my computer wanted to take the day off today, and I'm just not letting it do that. This viewport's a little smaller now. Okay, let's see. 72 DPI draft quality. Let's talk just a little bit about that. The draft quality didn't look too bad, but if you're getting a lot of like, if it looks really sort of grainy, like there's a lot of noise in your rendering, this is probably the main culprit, the quality. So if you up it from draft quality to good quality, you'll see a noticeable difference in the graininess of the picture. It'll actually be much more clear. Okay. The other setting here is the size of the viewport or the size of the frame of your photo, right, if you're rendering, and the DPI. So you could say viewport DPI, so this is 2086 by 1108, and you could say DPI, right? So the dots per inch, you could actually change that. So the physical size in inches, then you could start to change how many dots per inch there are. So for instance, if I went to, let's say viewport, and then I up this to 300, right? Then when you save this, it's going to be, actually, I'm not sure, let's see why it's not letting me. Oh, I see, custom. All right, now I can change this here, right? Right, I could change the DPI and then have the size 800 by 600 pixels or whatever pixels I want. I could change this to inches, so I could actually say 17 inches by 11 inches. The resolution of this then would be whatever 17 times 300 is by 11 times 300. So, it'd be quite large actually, right? So this is the way you can actually begin to use this, but you want to make sure that you're dialing things in correctly. If you're going to up the DPI, then what I recommend is actually entering in a custom size here and working within inches, because this is dots per inch. So here you're setting the pixels and resolution, but that's all relative to the size of the rendering, right? That's actually quite large. Just gonna turn that down. And you know what? I'm just going to go back to the current viewport, and I'll just say viewport this. Okay. Let's see if changing the size of my viewport makes a difference here. Could just be because it's, there's a lot of triangles in this mesh. It's silly, but it's the way it is. So while this is going, are there any other quick questions? What I'd like to do is get like 3 quick renderings out here. Let's see, I can always look at the time remaining, and it starts to hover back and forth, and it looks like it's hovering back and forth around the 6-minute mark. So we have 6 minutes for questions, and if we don't have 6 minutes worth of questions, then I'll just end this rendering early, and we'll talk about some more settings. Anyway?
So just to be clear, we're still doing just the wall lattice, not what you're showing as an example, correct?
You can do any lattice you want. We've gone over several different ways you can make lattice, either through a silhouette wall drawing, right? Taking a series of trusses, you know now how to make a curve and then start building lots of other curves off of one curve, off of mini curves, off of curves and curves and curves. You just start entering lists of things, right? And so you are to develop your own truss, or sort of, I guess, space frame or space frame or lattice system, right?
Okay, thank you.
This is what I did. It's using the same wall truss thing that we went over last time, actually. So, but you know, depending on what curves you plug in, right? You can plug in any kind of curve you want to those ingredients, and you start to get different results out. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Deidre. Oh, this looks like it's already gone down to about 3 minutes. So I suspect we have a little bit of geometry up here, but it's right around here that it's got to get all that foreground stuff, but it shouldn't take too much longer. What other questions you guys have?
So we're gonna need to submit for Monday 3 drawings from top and 3 drawings from perspective.
3 orthographic drawings, right?
Oh,
So a top and
orthographic,
2
okay.
side elevations,
Okay.
as well drafts, as well as drawings with using Make 2D, as well as 3 sort of draft immersive perspectives.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So let me just show you some examples from the past here. Why not? While we're waiting a few more minutes for this to go anyway here. Will this ever go? There we are. Start. And I say this because I've seen you guys raise the bar on the previous cohort in Studio, so I think you guys can do it in 367 as well. Let's see, generative lattice. There we are. Now these were plugged in and composed within a template that I gave them, and we'll get that on next week as well. Let's see, this is Jean Array. This will be a good one, probably. Might be too large to actually open, right? So you can see a set of perspectives and a set of drawings, right? Let me find one that's actually sized better here. Not sure why that opened up so small. I guess they're all opening up really small. We have some line weight issues here, but I think that's just mainly to do with the preview of the PDF and Google Drive at the moment, because some of these folks worked really hard on these line weights, right? So this one came from one of those SolidWeb wall drawings, right? Let's try Nick. Right, so at the, actually, maybe it'd help if I saw thumbnails, or maybe it won't actually give me a preview thumbnail. I'm trying to think who had some really good ones here. Let's see what Kiana's look like. Right. So essentially you're designing a system and you're also developing the representation to describe it. These are hard to see because they're previews on Google Drive of a PDF with line work, unfortunately. Antonio's was pretty good, I remember. What? It says I'm offline. That doesn't make any sense, Google. Can you guys see me? Hear me? Okay. All right, well, screw Google then. Forget it. All right, let's see how this is doing. Okay, finally I can save. If you want to preserve that transparent background, you need to save as a PNG rather than a JPEG. JPEG will flatten things out. So I'll save this as a PNG. I'll throw this somewhere on my desktop. Chunky. and boom. All right. A couple of things here, right? One is that we need to, you know, frankly, you should be doing this. I don't care what you're using to render. You should be saving these views as you go and as you just sort of determine the perfect perspectives that you're going to use for your final boards. Any project you do. If I, let's say, go onto the perspective label here, the viewport label, I say set view, right? I can change this to top, bottom, left, right, front, back, perspective, 2-point perspective, isometric, and so, you know, named views is at the very bottom. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and click that. And it brings up a box. Maybe it's over here for you, or maybe it's floating on your screen. But here I can actually save. By hitting that save button, I can say perspective 01. Right. And now I accidentally messed something up. I can always go back and change it right back to perspective 01, right? So as I start to frame my perspective vantage points here, I can save them once I've lined everything up so that I can always go back to them and re-render, adjust things, and move forward. Whoa. I think I zoomed in just a little too far. You know, Josh problems. Just a little dab will do me here. All right. So let's say I wanted to save that view and call this interior 01 or something like that, right? Okay. And when I go back to the viewport label and I go to set view, not only do I have top, bottom, left, right, front, back, perspective, 2-point perspective, isometric, whatever, but I have any views that I've saved, right? So I can always go back to them and say, oh, I want perspective 01, or right? Or I can bring up this box, and of course I have them right here, and I can even get a little preview thumbnail, which is kind of helpful. Okay. Let's get this lined up. There we go. Eye level 01 or something like that, right? And you can begin to describe these however you want. Say I was walking on top of this thing. So I'm standing here looking out at this, what looks like a lattice scape, if you will. Okay. That way, if you mess up or do anything else, you need to go back in, you can always recapture that, right? You can also, really important, if you're wanting to, you know, do a make 2D of the same perspective and sort of overlay line work over top of the rendering, right? Then saving that view can become really important because you want to make sure everything is exactly the same when you do the make 2D as you did when you hit the render button, right? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? I think you guys probably had to do that, right? Make 2D and overlay it, or make a composition drawing over some rendered geometry, right? So, which you're free to do here, but you don't have to do that. I don't mind just having line work versus just having stuff that's just rendered. So, and again, I just picked this as this is a really large viewport. So let me see, it hasn't given me, so it says 19 minutes remaining, but let me jump up to 23, 26, 29. Oh, so it's still growing. Now it's back down to 16. Let's see where this settles in, and if it gets down to about 10 minutes, I'll just let it go in the background. All right. So, again, just trying to be as clear as I can be, right? You know, if you look through all the examples I've shown here, right, with lattices, there's a number of different ways you could begin to approach this and create a lattice system, right? I mean, look, if you got, instead of making lines and polylines, if you started to make polycurves, right? And started connecting up vertices, right? Because the game we're playing here is connect the dots, right? So if, let's say, you know, there's a chance, maybe there's an opportunity for you if you're interested in making polylines or polycurves rather than just straight lines. You know, if you really wanted to get into that, right? You know, I think the key is to experiment sooner rather than later. You know what I mean? That way on Monday, you know, you can get some feedback that's useful, right? So that you can be productive with that next week and finish up project 1. Okay. But I'm trying not to be prescriptive, right? You can do this any number of different ways. If you came in with a system that looked like this, that'd be pretty sick. This one's tight. That one's lit. You know, I mean, you know, just, this one's whack. You know, I don't know, whatever you want to say. So, you know, to me, it's about, you know, how do you represent it and how do you tell us a little bit about it? Okay. Next week, we'll talk more about the diagram sort of thing, right? So you'll have a couple of views, but then we'll sort of, yes, exactly. Sexy, spicy. Ooh, that's an interesting combination there. Well, you can pull these things apart, or you can step-by-step sort of bake certain parts of the sequence out of how you generated it. Yeah, that's sick nasty from Josh. Yeah, sure. Well, you know, you haven't seen anything yet. Even you guys could make really boring ones. As soon as you start tiling them all together in a grid, it still becomes sick nasty. So you guys will do some sick nasty stuff. Trust me. Okay. But that's the goal, right? And those PDFs that I tried to show you, those were the, you know, that's the final result. Okay. Now, just to warn you, in project 2, we'll start talking about surfaces, and we're going to have some laser cutting to do. Okay. So I'll just brief you on that. At some point, I'll have you buy a couple of sheets of 1-ply chipboard. It's not expensive stuff, but you have to cut it down, and you'll have to, you know, do social distancing and go into and you know, you'll schedule something with Kyle online, and then you'll drop things off and pick things up. If for some reason you're really concerned about having to go to campus and do that, even with social distancing measures, and he's really thorough and strict about that stuff. He has dots on the floor so everybody stays 6 feet away from each other. There shouldn't be more than a few people at a time in the building. You'll be disinfecting things regularly. But if you have concerns about that, I understand, then you can discreetly let me know at that time, and I can come up with an alternative way for you to do the assignment that doesn't involve you having to go physically to campus and interact with anybody. Okay. But I'm just sort of warning you guys, that's coming up. Second project is pretty sweet. We're gonna laser cut some flat stuff that's gonna, you know, be assembled into 3-dimensional stuff. It's pretty cool. It's sexy spicy. There we go. Sexy spicy. I should write that down. That's the new default file name when I save stuff that I'm going to delete later. All right. So, anywho, and then the third one. Look, so the way this semester is sort of devised, right? We're going to do a lot of stuff with the parametric design with curves and lines right now and points. We'll move on to surfaces and data trees and prototyping, digital fabrication in the second one. And in the third one, we'll have less time, and you guys will be exponentially busier because studio will be, you know, you'll have studios and tests and things like that to contend with, you know, because we'll be getting towards the end of the semester. Plus, it'll be November, so we'll actually have a couple of days off here and there, right? Is it, which days are in Thanksgiving, of course, Thanksgiving holiday. But what's the other one? I actually don't think we missed Thanksgiving holiday in this course because we only meet Mondays and Wednesdays. But anyway, Veterans Day maybe. Is it Veterans Day in November? I can't remember. Anyway, it'll be a much simpler project, but it'd actually be pretty fun. They had a great time with it last time, where we actually devised a generative algorithm, and then they grew a cityscape. It was pretty crazy. So I'll show you guys examples. But we'll probably just, like, you know, again, for that last one, it'll be, you know, you'll get your choice between several different algorithms to sort of grow, make some rules, and then watch the city sort of grow in front of you, and then you'll be doing some axon drawings of them. So, all right. Any other quick questions? This is a short day, so we're done as far as I'm concerned. But I'm here to answer questions, and if there's any one-on-one questions afterwards, some troubleshooting I can be of help with. I can, Alex had a question about that, so maybe I can help with. Yeah, what's up, Maria?
So for Monday, we can do just the draft rendering quality?
Yeah, it's
And
just draft.
okay.
They're all drafts. They're
Okay.
meant to be like iteration number one. Just like show me what you're thinking, how it's,
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of you come in with just like, a rendering of 3 different ideas, right? Rather than 3 renderings of one idea, right? If that's fine, if that's the case, that's fine too, right? Use this to your advantage. You can use it to get some feedback, both on your scheme and what you're doing, as well as what you're, how to get the perfect perspectives of it and drawings of it and things, diagrams of it and things like that. Okay. Clayton, yes, this lecture will be posted on campus as soon as we're done. What happens is as soon as it doesn't start processing the video, even when I stop recording, it doesn't process the video till I leave Zoom. And then it takes like half an hour to process, and then I can upload that to YouTube. And it takes like 2 seconds to upload, and then like sometimes 30 minutes to process. And as soon as the standard definition, at least version is up and processed, then I get a link I can share, and I can put that link and embed it into Canvas. So I usually take care of that before studio time every Monday, Wednesday. But yeah, this will, just like all the others, it'll be in that module 1 at the right date. In fact, it'll be right after that big bright red link that says, click here to turn in your PDF and JPEG drawings and renderings. Okay.
So, Josh.
Yeah.
My question was, so you know how we could divide a line into points, right? So like you divide your curve into points. Is there a way to do that, except instead of doing points, you can surround it with circles to kind of like make a pseudo like tube or like a pipe of some sort? So like whenever you generate those points, you can make a circle around it.
Around each point?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you divide a circle or a curve into points, right? Mm-hmm. You can populate each of those points. That becomes the ingredient for a circle widget, right? Circle widget needs a center point and a radius.
Okay.
So that list of points that you get as division points, you can plug into a circle widget, and you'll get a list of circles out.
Okay, cool.
You want to see that? I'm
sure.
dying to show. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, sure. Why not, right? It's a piece of cake. Let's see. Share. Can you see my screen? New.
Yes.
No save changes. Whatever. Large object. Sure, why not? Large object. Are you starting with a circle or just any curve? Are you starting with a circle or just any curve?
Any curve.
Okay. Uh-oh. Windows must be doing some updates. My performance is being severely compromised here. All right. Let me open up Grasshopper. Maybe if I can spell correctly. I'll just use the button. It's easier. Sorry, I just have to turn Grasshopper on. I'm not sure what's going on here, but it must be, I don't know why this is taking so long. That's weird. Windows does this to me sometimes. It's like I open up Windows because I need it for class. And it's like, hey, you have some updates to install. You need to restart. Would you like to restart right now or reschedule for tomorrow? It's like, why can't you just let me, like, I don't know, come back an hour later after I'm done with class? I'm not sure what's going on here, though. Something's not right with Windows. This inferior operating system just gets on my nerves. At least with Windows 10, they tried. Windows 8 was a hot mess. Yeah, I apologize. I'm not sure why this is getting hung up. And I'm not sure what exactly is taking my system resources here. Okay, finally decided to respond, it looks like. Okay, so I have a curve in Rhino. I'm going to go ahead and reference it in to Grasshopper, params tab. I find curve, right click, set one curve. That'll allow me to select something in Rhino and bring it into and reference it into Grasshopper. So I can build off of it now. I can use this as an ingredient for something else, right? In this case, it'll be an ingredient for a divide curve widget. So here's the curve to divide. The number of divisions will be here. I'll go ahead and go to the params tab again for a number slider. Double click on that, constrain that to integers. I don't want to divide things 2.5 times. They want 2 divisions or 3 divisions, not 2.5 divisions, right? So turn that minimum to 1, maximum to 20, or I don't know, whatever. I'll make this a variable. There we go. All right. And now let's see, point. All right, so we have points. Now we need to make another type of curve. In this case, this type of curve is a circle. Circle, the ingredients are a base plane or point, right? And the radius. The reason why it says base plane is because you can give it, let's say, the same point, but in the base plane like the XZ plane. And then it'll suddenly be a vertically drawn circle rather than being drawn on the XY plane, right? So by default, though, it's set to the 0, 0, 0 point on the XY plane. So if I give it these points, then it'll pick all those points on the XY plane. And I can, again, make another widget for the radius, make that a variable. So I can make these things grow bigger or smaller. Yeah. You know what's really fun? Oh, this is great. You're going to love this. I'm just going to make a simple line here. Why not? I'm going to, yeah, I'll reference that line in. Sure, why not? Right click, set one line. With a line, it wants you to select the start and the end point, interestingly enough. There we go, there's a line. Okay, the line is just like any other curve, except it just doesn't have any curvature to it. The curvature parameter is set to 0. And I'm going to go ahead and find a t address along this curve. Evaluate curve at a t parameter, right? Just like we've done in the past. Take this curve, I'm going to reparameterize it, right click, reparameterize. That means that when I plug it in now, you know, I don't know what the maybe possibly the length, what the start point and end point were for this, but the addresses, what reparameterizing does is it sets the start to 0 and the end to 1, right? So it normalizes it to 0 and 1. Go ahead and plug in a number slider, right? So now we're plugging in an address along this sort of street-like line to place a point along it, right? Finding a location along the curve and placing a point there. All right. And I'm going to copy and paste that. And I'm going to do the same thing here, except instead of using this t parameter 0.17 in this case, I'm going to write an expression in the t input. I'm going to say, take x, whatever we're plugging in for t, and subtract it from 1. So 1 minus x. And so now we're also going to get 0.83 or whatever. So we're going to get 2 lines that do this. There's a point and there's a point. Now let's make some circles, shall we? All right, circle. And circle. Point and a point. And let's see here. Oh, I'll just make a copy of this one. It's easier. There's a radius, there's a radius. All right, so now I can move these back and forth. I want them to be at least, okay, let's move these off to the edge there. Oh yeah, there we are. Okay, now look at this. I can find the intersections of these 2 circles. Oh, this is so great. I'm so happy. I don't know, anyway, I'm easily amused. Here we should have 2 points, right? And we have these points, of course, as well. Let's see, this is the start point and end point for this curve. Let me think here for just a second. I want to get the endpoints of this, yeah. Now I can start to draw more lines. And you might see where I'm going with this in just a minute. I'll take the start here. Yeah. And I'll draw to one of these. Yeah, okay. And I'll take the end here. I'll draw to both of these as well. And now when I change this, because the circle radius never changes, and so this is a way to actually make a hinge system where the lengths of the members never actually change. Oh wait, sorry. I'm using the wrong points here. I don't need those. What I do is I use this one. Sorry. Here we are. Yeah, it's like those wood slat gates that you used to get for pets and children to keep them inside your kitchen, except those are like amputation devices, so they stopped letting you make those anymore, right? So anyway, isn't that the most elegant piece of geometry you've ever seen? Like just two circles, slide them back and forth. Oh, it's so great. Anyway, and you just find the radius. Anyway, yeah, so you can do all kinds of things with these things, right? Once you know the basic ingredients of curves and points and generating points from curves and then generating more curves from all those points and back and forth, you can begin to generate lots of different things. Okay.
Then basically we're going to take just the snapshots of this like you taught us from Rhino of the other drawings.
Yeah, you bake them back into Rhino.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
so
once
you
you
want
have
us to
something
bake it or just
Yeah.
quick snapshot?
You'll have to bake it in order to make 2D anything and also in order to render anything. I want you to try rendering, like actual Rhino geometry, okay? Because if you have any problems, then I want to be able to troubleshoot those next week as well.
No, I'm talking about the other, because total we need to submit 6 drawings.
Yeah, but all of them are going to be like baked versions of something from Grasshopper.
Okay.
Right, you do something in Grasshopper, all the stuff I did in Grasshopper
Mhm.
disappears as soon as I close Grasshopper. So I can't really render or make 2D any of it until I bake it back.
Yeah, but I remember, but you also taught us to do like a quick snapshot. Oh, it was actually in Rhino, never mind.
I think that's just view, capture to file.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So never
Right.
mind. So just want us to bake.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else I could be of help with at the moment? If not, I just assume you guys can get busy with whatever it is. I work with curves as well. Yeah, I think so. I got a notification update when every day I get a notification update Windows. It's annoying. It's like, how many updates do they issue every day?
Hey Josh, Rhino using the GPU or the CPU to render?
GPU if you have a graphics card,
Okay.
which you should. Hopefully you do. Who's
Yeah.
asking me? I can't.
Caesar?
Oh, Caesar. Okay. Hey, Caesar. Yeah, it should be. Oh, you can also Google that, right? So it depends on how many. If you're having any issues with your processor or your graphics card, you can always Google. And McNeil has a pretty active help set of help folks, but they also have a pretty active community of folks who just ask these questions and answer these questions too. So if you have any specific issues, you can always tell me, but I'll probably just Google it myself or try to find somebody at McNeil to help. But yeah, usually the GPU, because you can usually use the graphics card here. Like I have a MacBook Pro, it seems to work pretty well. Although with Rhino 6, some of the stuff is a little glitchy, but I have a feeling that had to do more with I was running Windows and Parallels wouldn't update. I forget what it was. It wasn't the .NET framework. It was something else that had to do with. It was OpenGL. It wouldn't update the latest OpenGL for a while, and finally it did. But that was more of a Parallels running Windows operating system over top of Mac operating system issue than anything with Rhino, to be honest. GPU only works for the ray trace viewport and uses CPU for regular Rhino renderers. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Tristan obviously knows more about this than I do.
Yeah, I tried figuring out how to use the GPU last year, but it just wasn't working.
Yeah, were you guys using like V-Ray or something, or were you guys using Rhino Render, or were you guys using Studio Max, or what are you guys using?
We ended up using the ray tracing viewport.
Was that any good? Did you like it?
Yeah, it was faster.
Because the thing is, I don't want like a bunch of hard crisp shadows. I want the soft radiosity slash. So I don't know if that. I'll look into that. Interesting. Ray traced viewport. Cool. I learn something new every day. Man, I can't wait. We're going to go in studio. We're going to go over project 1 today. Monster drawings, monster models. Ray trace display mode. Is that what you're talking about? Or real-time rendering? How is that for rendering in Rhinos? So if you had set it to ray traced rendering in one of your viewports. Okay, I got it. Okay, so I do know about that. Yeah, okay. Got it. Get it. All right, well, if there's nothing else, then I am going to leave, because that way I can get this video recording underway here, so I can get it uploaded for you guys. All right, take care, everyone. Have a nice weekend. I'll see you on Monday.